And so I had to design a programming course, and there were many constraints. Like I only had a couple of months to teach them, and there were students with different levels of programming knowledge. So I had to design the course in such a way that I could try to benefit as many people as possible. And there were many challenges on the way, but each of them was like a learning experience.
And Arushi, could you share some thoughts on that as well?
Sure. So, like Adhan said, I think a lot of soft skills that we did gain throughout our journeys with FRC have been extremely important. Like we've both said before, time management is super important, especially like now in college. Um, and like him, I also used to kind of not like public speaking, but I think I gained a lot of confidence just having to do it so many times over and over again. And so I kind of learned how to make presentations to sponsors, how to cold call sponsors, how to also like accept rejection, because that's something that happened a lot of times. Like sponsors don't always want to sponsor you, and there's a lot of times, like even during the competition, that things go wrong. And so I think accepting rejection was an important lesson. Learning, or like just trying new things, like even if you fail with one thing, like just trying maybe a different mechanism, or like approaching sponsors in a different way and taking feedback, like all of those were super important things. um I also learned how to like speak on my feet and think on my feet and like make presentations, because a lot of times like I would be called upon without like prior intimation to do that. And so I think it did help me a lot in many fields just beyond robotics.
So, can you share an example of a situation where gracious professionalism and cooperation has helped you, and also sort of explain those concepts to people who might not be familiar with what gracious professionalism actually is?
So, gracious professionalism is when you decide that you will help your teammates, you will help other people, and you will help them graciously, and you will even help your rivals if, even if that means that you will sacrifice some of your own time and maybe some of your own winnings or whatever. So it just means that you have to help out your community on the bigger scale, while also um, while also kind of being gracious and being nice about it. And this skill is kind of imbibed in you when you're doing FRC. And you only get to learn this when you go to the competition. When I went to the competition, like there were so many teams out there, and the people were so nice. They were ready to like help us whenever they want. And they like, even if their robot wasn't working, they used to come to our area and help us fix our robot, even though they knew their robot wasn't completely working. And like, because of this, the connections you form, they're so much more meaningful and so much nicer. And as you go along, you get to learn this as yourself when you're teaching other people, when you're teaching other teams. So many of the people in Elevate also mentored the people in American School of Bombay. And they were our opponents. And even though they were our opponents, we were still helping them, and they were also kind of helping us. And we formed this connection throughout, like just by doing this. And in 2 years back when I was in R Factor, they even ended up beating us at the competition, which is like even though we lost, it was a great moment for us, because it was our team which we helped, and it was a good feeling.
Okay, so the next question is that one of the biggest challenges many FRC teams face is when their own team members kind of feel left out. For example, all the students want to be a part of the drive team or the team that makes the chairman's presentation. So how do you handle these issues? And as you all were the leaders of your sub teams, how did you all handle these issues?
So I think what was the most rewarded was when people did show up. So I think it was extremely important, like for us at least, that people showed up and that they tried their hardest. And I think that got people more recognized. And also I think it's super important, again, especially if you're like leading a sub team, to kind of be democratic about it. And so we did have like a process where we gave like everyone a fair chance to kind of be a part of the drive team. And eventually I think everyone, at least for our last year on Elevate, I think everyone knew, or rather everyone like respected the decision for who would be on the drive team. And I think everyone just realized that this was what was best for the team, and it wasn't really thinking about yourself at that point. It was more about thinking about what the best decision for the team was. And I think that's like an important, extremely important mindset to have as part of a team.
And Adyan, could you share some thoughts about that as well? Because you were the head of the programming team as well, and you mentored so many students as part of that.
Yeah, so when I was mentoring the programming team, there were many people who already knew programming, and there were some people who had no idea what it was. And it was my responsibility as the head that I had to make sure that everyone got an equal opportunity. And obviously, the people who knew programming were at an advantage, and they got to contribute more on the robot just naturally. But even the people who knew lesser, we taught them, and at the end, they were many of them were able to like code basic stuff like a PID loop, which is very important in our like in our robot. And they were also able to code like the arm movement action, which we actually use in the robot. So in the end, you if you don't know anything, you will come into the program and learn. And even though there might be other people who know more than you will get a chance to contribute. And sometimes there are conflicts and they're hard to handle these conflicts. So we do our best. We try as we make democratic decisions, and we try to figure out what's the best solution for the team and for the individuals.
Can you talk about a few memories that you cherish as part of FORCE programs, and what your favorite parts of this competition were?
Okay, sure. So I think some of my favorite memories include, so first of all, the competition itself. Like the atmosphere is just like super electric because there's so many people from like different teams from all around the world, and all everyone wants to do is kind of learn about each other and learn how to like work together, because you have to like be on an alliance together and like compete graciously. And so I think that was a super awesome experience. Like the kind of cultural like mixing that happens, the kind of like there's like dancing and music and like a lot of fun stuff that like goes on at competitions. But I think also like it was such a like important moment to bond with my own team on like the car rides to the competition, like waking up early in the morning and like just going on the bus to the venue and then coming back after a day, and like a lot of times celebrating victories together, and also like when we lost, just kind of just being together in all of that. That was like super fun for me and super inspiring for me.
Also, one of my few favorite memories are when the deadline came closer, like when the competition was there, we had to finish our robot, and many of the times we were behind the schedule, and we needed to make sure that we complete before we move on to the competition and we take our robot there, which is completely working. So I had to spend like many nights, like complete nights at the workshop trying to make the robot. And those were my favorite memories because it's very fun when you're staying up all night just working on something you like with your friends. And the when the sun rises, you like finally pack up and then you go back home and you go to school or something, and it's a lot of fun because you do something you like and you can see the tangible benefit right then.
And Natyan, can you elaborate a little bit on how the non-technical aspect of FIRST makes it different from any other robotics or programming competitions that you've participated in?
Yeah, so a lot of first has to do with like coding, electric, like the technical stuff, but I would say roughly the same amount has to do with the non-technical stuff. This includes things like sponsorship, raising funds, which is going to different sponsors and asking them and promoting your own team, doing outreach programs. Like this is one outreach program we're doing right now, this Zoom call. There are other things we have to do, like help the underprivileged students and also teach other people, and raising a lot of awareness. If you participated in programs like WR or FLL, our FRC teams used to conduct those programs. So we used to volunteer for them every single time, every single year. And because of that, I would say that the other side, the non-technical side of FRC is as important or even more important than the technical side of stuff. And there's a lot more to learn there.
So Arashi, you're a Dean's List winner, and you also got the opportunity to meet Mr. Dean Kamen. who's the founder of First. Can you tell us all about that experience, meeting him, the entire Dean's List winner experience? What were the highlights of that entire experience? What did you learn? What did you do? And the people you met?
Sure. So as part of like winning the Dean's List Award, we got to go and meet so basically the board of First directors. So we met Dean Kamen, we met Woody Flowers, and Don Bossy, so like the president of First and the co-founders of First. And it was an extremely enlightening experience for me, I think, just because when I spoke with them, they kind of, so they, first of all, they told us about like First's journey itself from like, starting from a mere like idea in the 90s to kind of becoming this like huge program run across the USA with like, and across the world actually, with like sponsors being companies like Apple and NASA and Boeing, and kind of like the skills that they're providing and the experiences that they're providing like loads of children today. So I think it was really cool to see how someone's brainchild kind of like grew in that sense, and how they kind of made like a successful venture from like a simple idea. And they also kind of spoke to a lot of important stuff that has stayed with me even now. And some of the stuff that they said was about making one's education count, about like being actively engaged in like the learning that you do in, and they kind of stress the importance of like empathy and the importance of like the human touch in even in like a field such as robotics. Like the one thing that robots can't do is like empathize, and so it's so important to have empathy. And that's where some of like the most important inventions or the most like beneficial inventions for the world come about from, like a space of empathy. And so like those learnings and just speaking with them about such topics was extremely enlightening for me, and also very inspiring. And then of course, like the entire summit had a bunch of like fun stuff planned for us. We got to visit Dean Kamen's house, and that in itself was like almost like a mini like museum with like these cool quirky like machines and artifacts that he himself and like his company Deka, they just kind of like put together on the spot. And it was really cool to see so many like creative and imaginative like things just like around every nook and corner in his house. So I think honestly that's something I really can't forget. So I think overall what I learned most from the summit, and of course we went to like so we toured like MIT and Yale, and we got to speak with like their college admission heads and things like that also. And those conversations, some of those officials are also on the board of First. So again, those conversations were in their own right extremely inspiring, and they kind of gave us advice on how we should move forward, not just in like the college application process, but also in general in college and in life. And so I think all of those experiences, all of those conversations, meeting with Dean's List winners from like around the world, who I'm still in touch with today. So all of that was really, really important for me, and not something that I can forget.
So can you all share an experience when in the competition things didn't go as planned, and how did you all deal with it?
So many times when we took our robot to the competition, things didn't end up working. I remember one of the years we took our robot and the wires got cut during travel, and that caused half the component of our robot to just stop working. And this was a pretty big like a loss for us, because the robot did one of the critical parts of the challenge, and it wasn't able to do that anymore. But we had one day before the competition started, just after we landed. So in that one day, we tried to figure out the best we could to recreate the robot, and it was kind of stressful because the time was ticking. But we managed to do something decent, and the robot was kind of half functioning again. And those were some stressful 12 hours, but it was fun, and those memories last a long time. And these kind of things didn't just happen that one year; they happened almost every year. And something or the other always went wrong, because there's so many factors like traveling, and then um things break because of different conditions, like different environment, and a lot of things broke. and it was fun fixing them.
Arshi, do you have something to add?
Yeah.
Sure. So that was one experience. Another experience was when we went to the competition, and our bumpers were kind of not within like regulation, so we had to like take it apart. But because we had to take the bumpers apart, we had to take up like apart in the arm of the robot, and so we had to spend again the whole first day fixing. So honestly, at this point, it was kind of like a theme, and we had to kind of fix it from scratch again, and it took a lot of our practice time. But in the end, again, we learned because we just did it so fast, and we put in like all our effort in those 12 hours. So it was very rewarding to see that. um, I think another experience I remember is our batteries one so another time our batteries weren't working, and then this time another team kind of helped us out, and that was, I think, when all of us realized how amazing gracious professionalism and competition is, just because the team, they gave their own batteries that they were using to us to use, and we thought that was really kind of them.
And can you sort of talk us through what you first expected when you first participated in FRC? So in your rookie year, were you excited, anxious, scared, happy? What did it feel like? Did it meet your expectations? How was it?
So in my first year, it was also the first year of our Team R Factor, and Team R Factor was the first team in India. So we literally had no idea what we were going into. Our mentors didn't know what the program was. We didn't know what the program was, and we faced too many challenges that year. But in hindsight, that was one of the best years we've ever had, because it was where majority of the learning happened, and we didn't know what to expect when we went there, but what we got as a result of it was much better than what I had expected to start off with.
Arshi?
Yeah, like Adhyan said, like the first year that we did FRC, there was no there was no precedent for it. And so we had no idea how to like build robots that are like industrial size. Like at best, some team members have done like FTC before and like FLL, but like those robots are on a much smaller scale. So I think this was the biggest project that like we had taken on, that anyone had taken on that team. And we, like our mentors kind of ended up learning along with us. And so it was a huge learning curve. Like that was probably the steepest year of the learning curve. But then we kept learning even after that. And I think what makes that like memory happy, I guess, is seeing now how the first ecosystem has evolved in India, and how you guys are hoping to like engage many more teams, and how just from a single team, like there are already so many more FRC teams in India. So I think that's a really like heartening thing to see.
And what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's just starting out with robotics?
When you're first starting out, there's like a lot of things thrown at you, and you might not know what you want to do, and it might be too much, like it'll be too overwhelming to start. But in the beginning, you should kind of take your time, focus on one of the areas, and try to learn as much as possible. And even if you don't end up contributing too much in your couple of beginning years, it's fine, because you're kind of just learning, and you kind of seeing what's happening. And once you learn enough, once you like spend a couple of years just watching other people doing it, like just trying it out yourself a bit, you will be able to get more confident and do it yourself. So don't worry if in your first year things don't go exactly like, if you thought in your first year that you would be building the robot completely by yourself. That will not happen. You will, in your first year, you will most likely be like learning the software needed to build the robot. You'll more likely be learning the programming skills needed to code the robot, and then in the future years you'll be able to apply it more directly to the robot itself.
And Arushi, can you add some thoughts as well about?
Sure. Like Adhyan said, I think it's super important to just be cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of learning to be done, and that it's not going to be like just a 1 year journey. So like it'll take a lot of time, and so I think everyone should just acknowledge that it's going to be hard, and there's a huge learning curve. But then at the same time, I think if you kind of work hard enough, or if you like just stick with the program, like if you stay on the team, you'll learn so much. You'll make so many like friendships for life, and you'll kind of just discover things, like, not to sound cheesy or anything, but you'll genuinely discover things like about yourself that you didn't know before, and you just have to give it time. Like, you have to be forgiving to yourself, and you just have to understand that you aren't going to necessarily make the most contributions your first year, but that's okay as long as you're like willing to learn and you're willing to like fail. And it's okay because everyone's a student and everyone's learning over there, so like no one's really judging you. And even if they do, like, you just have to keep learning, and at some point you will learn everything that you wanted to know to like participate in first. And like when you do, there's just so much to be proud of yourself for. So I think it's an important like experience to have.
So Arushi, you've accomplished so much in the fields of music and academics, and Adyan, you've achieved so much in comparative programming. How did you sort of manage your time while doing so many activities, managing your schoolwork, and at the same time participating in FORCE programs and doing robotics?
So it was definitely a challenge managing my time, but one thing I've learned from all of it is that anything, like if you want to do all of it, then it's definitely possible. I had to spend a lot of time on robotics after school, and once I reached home, I used to work on the programming competitions I was talking about before. And I was also, I also had to do like meet my friends and play video games and stuff like that. So it was hard managing my time, but in the end, I did it properly, and I just focused as much and did things as efficiently as I could, and everything worked out for me fine in that regards. And I was able to like use all my time very productively. So one thing you have to take in mind is that just you don't need to like waste your time too much when you're kind of like when you're traveling or when you're free. Don't waste that time on things which aren't needed, and use that time more effectively on things which are higher priority.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think from my experience, it was just because I was super into like music and a bunch of other stuff along with robotics. It was kind of maybe downtime for me from like each of those activities to do another one. So it was really fun, and also I was super engaged in all of the things that I was doing at the time. So it never really felt like too much work at all. But instead, it felt like a good like experience managing my time and a good practice to manage my time in in a relatively low stakes environment.
And would you say that first, like participating in FRC, where we actually have a deadline when we have to do so much, build so many robots, do sponsorship meetings, do outreach, would you say that actually kind of helped you manage your time, or how was it? Did first help you in that respect?
Yeah, it definitely helped me manage my time, just because like even so, I mean, there's like first and all my activities beyond first, but even within first, there was like a lot of stuff to do. And so it kind of helped me learn how to plan better. So, I mean, like you have to spend this much time or effort, or even like just designate this many team members to a certain task. And then but you can't like leave anything else behind. Like you can't focus on building the robot at the cost of outreach, and you can't just do outreach like at the cost of the robot. So everything really has to come together as a whole. So I think it's a good experience in like kind of learning how to make a bunch of different gears like mesh together into like a cohesive machine, or like a cohesive team that kind of participates in that competition.
And Adyan, you were the programming lead at Team Elevate. So did any of the programming languages you learned help you achieve your success in the competitive field of programming? Like, did anything you learned being a part of an FRC team help you with other competitions as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I learned Java through FRC, and I used Java in the beginning when I was participating in these online programming competitions. But eventually, I started learning other languages. When I went to college, I also used Java for my introduction class projects. So FRC, the skills I learned during FRC for programming were very helpful to me, and yeah, they were very helpful in that regards. And also, apart from programming, I had learned a lot of math which I had applied, and that math was also directly applicable in college. And in my other programming competitions which I did.
Yeah, and Arushi, for you, where were you able to apply the skills that you learned from FRC?
So I was able to apply, like, again, like Adhin said, I was able to apply like the physics and the math knowledge that we kind of just got working on the robot in the IB as well, like in my physics and math classes. And then later on in college, like some of the math classes that I do, like the topics that I learned, I kind of saw how they could be applied back to FRC. So I mean, it was kind of a circle where you see like FRC things being applied to what you're learning, and then later on you like learn new stuff and then see how that could be applied to building robots. And I think because I'm still doing robotics in some fashion, like it's just a continuous learning process for me. And just seeing how like interwoven like a lot of the STEM disciplines are is very interesting.
So FRC is a really international competition, and we get the opportunity to travel to so many countries. Like we get to visit Australia and the United States, and that helps us meet a lot of other like-minded individuals. And Arushi, you won the Dean's List Award as well, so you got to meet several other winners as well and communicate with them. And just attending these competitions, can you talk about some of the friendships you formed, the connections, and some fun moments that you've actually had, that you've actually been able to experience because of FIRST?
Yeah, so like the friendships that I made, especially in the Dean's List Summit, but even otherwise, um, like those are still with me. I still like video call like the people that I met then pretty frequently, and we have a lot to talk about. Just because, well, more than just the shared experience of having done FIRST, but like all being Dean's List winners and seeing how we're like kind of going forward with our lives, and that's really fun. Like it's always fun to like catch up with people, and then so. And I think our team as well, just kind of like as a team, we bonded with a bunch of other teams, and like we have like interactions with so many other teams from India as well as like around the world, because we participated in Australia as well as the USA. And I think all of those have been huge learning experiences, because like otherwise I really wouldn't have had the same opportunity to like interact with teams from like, or people from like all over the world in such a setting.
And Adyan?
So I've made many friends throughout my whole robotics journey. It's been like 8 years. So obviously I've met a lot of people, and many of the people I'm still very close to. And the main thing I would say about the friends I've made through these programs is that they're very like-minded to me, and they share my passion for like nerdy stuff like programming and math. And because of that, I'm able to like talk to them about all of the things I've seen. Like suppose I say I see a YouTube video about math, I can go to them and tell them about, hey, that I saw this video, and then they'll be like, yeah, even I saw it and it was fun. And then we can go on like an 1 hour discussion about the videos. And so it's given me a way to talk to people about my like my fondness of math, and this has helped me motivate like further into the field of math and like physics and programming.
Um, so how have first STEM and robotics shaped your personality, and how have they like prepared you for the future?
So I would say it's been a very big part of my whole high school career, and I've learned more than what I've learned in FRC is definitely more than what I've learned in school, and that says a lot because, uh, like you spend so much time at FRC and you get to meet so many people. The learning is really there, and I'm really grateful that I got to do this program.
I also think that FRC provided a lot of opportunities that a lot of other high school students might not get, such as like cold calling or like writing emails to like sponsors and to huge companies and kind of asking them for like sponsorship and making presentations to these corporates. Also, like just organizing a lot of events, like organizing events for younger children and organizing events to like promote the uh, promote inclusion of like women in STEM. So I think a lot of those initiatives that like I worked on were invaluable sources of learning that I wouldn't have otherwise had in high school.
So this is a slightly longer question, and it includes information and like aspects of the answers from your questions for like many different other questions. And the question is, why should students participate in FORCE programs? And can you give reasons, and just based on your experience and many situations that you've been involved in, so why should they participate in a program and a competition such as FRC?
So from what I've said so far, I think it'll be clear that it helps a lot with like understanding of, it helps your understanding in stuff like math and physics and computer science, but it also teaches you a lot about the other things in life, like speaking and talking to other people, making like doing actual meaningful work in the community, teaching how to like you learn by teaching yourself, and you teach how to teach, and there are many other things such as that. And it's also helped me a lot throughout my college applications. I wrote a lot of my essays based on my robotics journeys, on my robotics competitions, and a lot of my interests have also been found because of robotics. So it's definitely worthwhile. If you're really interested in something, you should be able to do first very easily, and you'll enjoy it at the end of the day.
So now we'll be taking questions from the audience. Can you all just like drop your messages in the chat and we'll try and raise as many as possible. Okay, so the first question is, what grade would you suggest kids to start robotics and start FRC?
So the FRC program is meant for students starting from 8th or ninth grade, and before that, there are uh, other other programs like the first Lego League, which is for younger students starting from like 5th grade, and below 5th grade there are other programs as well, which you might look into, like the first Lego League Junior. So there are many programs for every age group, and the earlier you start on with, the more you get to learn.
Does participating in such robotics competitions help you get into good colleges?
I think yes, because I think it's because it's a huge like learning opportunity. And I think like everything that we've said so far, like just not just like the technical aspects that we learned, but like also just the soft skills and like learning how to speak to other people, like all of that has played a huge part.
And how big of a commitment is it? Like, is it like very difficult to do alongside schoolwork, or is it easy to do once you have the passion for robotics and STEM?
So it will definitely take a lot of time, and if you really want to dive into the program, then you will have to spend a lot of time, a lot of your after school hours, like I'm talking like 3-4 hours, uh, 3-4 hours a day when the competition is at its peak, and when the other time of the year when it's not as much, you'll be spending like maybe 10 hours a week. So there's a lot of time commitment you're putting into it, and it's not a small time commitment, so you should be aware of that. And um, you should like definitely think about, you might have to drop a few activities if you're doing it. So if you're trying to do like 7 activities apart from robotics, then it will probably not be possible. But if you're really interested in maybe robotics and a couple of other things, then you might be able to pull it off. But if you're trying to do too many things at once, it's not going to happen.
And also, I do think it's important to know that like the more time you put into FRC, the more you get out of it. So like even if you get away with like not putting much time, you won't really get much from the program itself. So to like get as much as you can, you do need to put in that time.
What kind of job opportunities could people get by learning robotics?
So you can, by learning robotics, you can learn, like you can get a job in many different fields, like computer science, which is a very big field, like a programmer, or you could get a job opportunity as like a mechanical engineer and work at a aerospace firm, or work for a company like Boeing. There are many other robotics, like robotics is an emerging field in itself, and there are many things like Boston Dynamics, if you've heard of that. They have cutting edge robots, so you could, if you're good enough, you could get to work for them. And there are many, like robotics itself is a big enough field that there are enough career opportunities available.
There's a question asking what a good robotics college is, and I think not just robotics, but any college, like any good STEM colleges and anything that allow you to practice robotics or continue your passion.
I mean, that's difficult for me to say, but there are many rankings online. So if you want, you can look at those rankings. And typically, colleges which are good at like technology and like computer science are also good at robotics. So if you want to get into a good college, then you'll have to research about which ones. Like you can look at the rankings and figure out which ones are the best for you, and it depends on your perspective. So I can't tell you which college is the best for you, but yeah.
Which resources do you all use to learn advanced Java?
We mainly just refer to YouTube videos to learn Java. There were a few YouTube tutorials. I don't remember who made them, but if you just Google like Java resources or like learn Java advanced, you will get some like answers, and that's what we used.
And not just about advanced Java, but just generally in the first few years of FRC, how did you exactly learn all of these things? Because as you said earlier, there was no FRC team before the first year that you participated in the competition. And so how did you go about learning everything and accessing all those resources and figuring all of it out?
Yeah, so when we started, even our mentors didn't know much because even they were just starting, and even we had no idea. So our best friend was like the internet, and thankfully there were many other teams who had made tutorials to do exactly what we needed to do. And the FRC website was also like our Bible. So there was enough resources on the internet that we spent a lot of time learning from there, and that was mainly how we got all our knowledge.
And even Arashi, could you shed some light because you were a key part of the construction team as well?
Yeah, like Adhan said, I think FRC has a lot of like resources available for people that are like interested enough to find them. So it has like a lot of like guides, and it sounds like a kit of parts. So that wasn't really like that much of a struggle. And I think the best thing that we did in a lot of the years was like look at other teams like Fast Robots and kind of look at the mechanisms that they had employed and kind of learn from like what other teams do.
On the same lines, there's another question where somebody says, I don't have much robotics experience, but does it make sense to attend FRC or learn basic programming first?
So if you're doing FRC, then depending on your team, you will probably like as part of the team, you will learn the skills needed. So you don't necessarily need to do it before, but if you do it before in your free time, you would be able to learn even more, and you would be able to start at a higher level. So you will be able to contribute more to the team as well.
And this is a really good question. How do you think people in smaller towns can participate in robotics and first and enroll in these programs and sort of experience what we have had the opportunity to sort of experience?
I think it's important for teams like Team Elevate to do as much as they can in making like robotics programs accessible to like a lot of people, because I think Team Elevate does have the resources to do that. And I think it's all just going to be, so I think the entire first ecosystem will have to kind of be built from ground up in India. So I think the ultimate goal should be that everyone in like every town can like participate in robotics and first, but I think that the responsibility to kind of facilitate that is on teams that currently have the resources, because FRC does require a lot of resources to participate. On the other hand, think programs like FTC and FLL are quite accessible for even people in small towns. And I think those are a good like way to start like your journey into first and gain like not necessarily all, but like a lot of the same skills that you would doing FRC.
What plays a more important role in FRC, Java or CAD, like programming or construction?
Both are equally important. I would say construction is requires more people because it's a bigger project, but without one, the other won't function. So you need both, and both are kind of work in separate sub teams. So even though you collaborate and there are many overlaps, they're kind of working separately.
And Arashi, any thoughts about that as well?
No, like Adhan said, I think they're like I mean, they're teams, sub-teams that do work together, but both of them have like an equally important role. And so they should both like focus on like getting whatever they're doing right. So I think like both are equally important teams.
So FIRST is a really wholesome competition, right? It's not just about the robotics aspect. Like there's so many different aspects of FIRST. And throughout your FRC journey, which fields did you explore? Which aspects of the competition did you enjoy most? And what did you sort of spend your time in? Because I know Adhyan and Arushi, you've been involved in construction and programming teams, but what did you sort of enjoy the most about this competition?
Well, I think the best thing about the competition is that you get to learn yourself while with your friends, and you get to learn and then directly implement it. So whatever you learn, you're kind of seeing the effect directly. And sometimes when you're studying something in school, you're like, why will I ever need to learn this? And this seems like a waste that I never need to know this in my life. But in robotics, is not exactly like that, because as soon as you learn it, you can get to build it. So that's one of the best things about it. And plus you're doing this with your friends, so it becomes even more fun.
And Arushi?
Yeah, so I kind of dabbled in a lot of different sub teams, and I found that I enjoyed I think actually I enjoyed like different things about each of those sub teams. And I think there was a lot for me to learn as a person from those sub teams. Like obviously there were a lot of technical skills to learn, like even just from like using like a power tool or using like things like that, to like learning how to speak and learning how to make presentations. Like all of those were like important skills, I think. And so I think there's like no matter what sub team you decide to like be a part of, there's a lot to learn within that sub team. So you can't really go wrong.
Okay, this is a question for Adhyan. What would be the best way for someone to get into competitive programming?
So the best way to get into competitive programming would be to start doing online competitions. And there are many websites. One of the best one is CodeChef, uh, which is really good for beginners. And if you know a bit of programming, then you can go on their website and start doing a few problems and see if you like it.
And so when you first came into FRC, like your rookie year, you might have not had an idea of what sub team to get into, because the first year of the team can be really intimidating. You're not sure what to start with: construction, programming, go on the outreach team, or do sponsorship. So how did you sort of go about those decisions? What factors did you consider, and what sort of things did you consider before joining the teams that you joined?
Um, So it depends on what you really like. So if you have no idea whether you like programming or if you like construction, then you can go in both the sub teams and you can you can try both of them out. There are many people who can do both. I preferred programming and I didn't like construction as much. So I spent most of my time programming and working on the code. But there were many people who did both equally. And if you want, you can try out both and learn the skills required for both and then choose whichever one you like. But there are many things and you can just try explore all of them. Just make sure that you aren't exploring too many things at the same time, because then you might not learn too much and you might get too overwhelmed with all the information.
Okay. And which is more challenging, the first tech challenge or the first robotics competition?
So the first robotics competition is more challenging than the first tech challenge. The first tech challenge is a smaller competition which requires like teams of up to like 10 to 12 people, whereas in FRC the teams can go up to like 50 to 60 different people. So FTC is easier, but it might be easier to start an FTC team because there are programs available in India, and there are many Indian teams, so you can get support from there. Also, the FTC competition is itself in India, the first regional levels. So if you don't want to directly travel, then FTC is a good option. But FRC is definitely like a bigger project, and you get to learn more, and I think it's cooler than FTC. Also, the age group for FTC is a bit younger, so you can start FTC maybe in the 7th or 8th grade, whereas in FRC the recommended age is like 9th grade.
And do you have to be in like your school FRC team, or can you do FRC independently outside of school?
You can do it independently outside of school, but FRC requires a lot of resources. So if you want to start your own team, then you need to find a lot of people in the team, at least like 10 to 12 different people to start out your team. So there is Team R Factor, which is an independently operated team in Mumbai, which if you like, you don't have to be in any school to be part of that team.
And the last question for today, what do you feel that a team like ours should sort of do to get more students involved in FRC? Obviously, this is a really large question, but just a few ideas on how we should sort of get more students involved in this competition, because it's a really great experience for so many students.
I think that it's really important to like run lots of different programs like y'all are doing already, but just make them like as accessible to people. And these include like basically like skill building programs for like programming or for like CAD or like basically a lot of different fields, just so that people can get like an idea of like what those technical skills are and like if they're even interested in that. And I think that it's important to kind of use your resources that you have to ensure that like ultimately the goal is to ensure that everyone can like participate in FRC because it's such an enriching experience. So I think you need to just like be cognizant of the fact that like our school is like quite privileged, and so it's our job kind of to like ensure that a lot of different people can benefit from this program.
And Adyan?
I think I agree with what Arushi said, that it's our responsibility as Team Elevate to spread as much, because we are one of the more privileged sides of society, to spread this program to society as much as we can.
So that's all we have for today. Thank you so much, Adyan and Arushi, for your time and for being an inspiration to everyone here. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, and everyone make sure to join us tomorrow for another insightful session with Mr. Alex Francis Burchard from FRC Turkey.
Thank you.
Can I switch off the light stream?
Yeah.
Okay.